Nightfall in the city has a pulse of its own, dark, hungry and always watching, but tonight, it watched a king fall. Lorenzo De Luca, feared Mafia boss, ruler of the underworld, stumbled through the back alley behind Kluand uneven. Someone had drugged him. Someone close. He reached for the brick wall, fingers trembling. The world tilted, lights spun, sirens echoed far away, or maybe just in his head. And then, a soft gasp, a pair of hands catching him before he hit the ground. Isabella. A girl nobody noticed. A girl the world stepped on without apology. She worked nearby. Delivering foe had been tossing garbage outside the restaurant. Only she didn't know he was the devil yet, sir. Hey, look at me. You're hurt. Lorenzo blinked, his gaze unfocused but sharp enough to catch her face, and something in him broke. Whisper escaped his lips, raw, emotional, desperate. Elena. But he meant his ex-wife. Isabella froze. No, I'm not. His hand gripped her wrist, strong, terrified. Don't leave me again, he breathed. I can't lose you. Not twice. The pain in his voice punched through her chest like a blade. She didn't know who Elena was. She didn't understand why he looked at her like she was the ghost who once shattered him. But she understood. One thing, he needed help, and she needed money. His wallet had fallen to the ground. When he collapsed, black leather, gold initials. Heavy with cash, aunts, her conscience twisted painfully. This was wrong. This was dangerous. But the city never gave her choices, only consequences. Okay, she whispered, trembling, I won't leave you. Lorenzo exhaled shakily, leaning into her warmth like a man drowning reaching for the last breath of. She dialed a cab, dragging his heavy, muscular frame with a strength she didn't know she had. When the driver saw, the man slumped beside her. He went pale. That's Lorenzo De Luca. Please, she whispered. Just drive. The cab sped into the night. Inside, Lorenzo's head rested against her shoulder, feverish, unconscious, lost in whatever nightmare tangled in her sleeve. Refusing to let go, Isabella swallowed. Hard. This wasn't normal. This wasn't safe. But then, his body trembled, a broken sound escaping his throat. Don't leave me. Something melted inside her chest. Something soft. Something foolish. She touched his cheek gently, whispering, I'm here. The cab entered a forest-lined road, leading toward the private hills outside the city. A place Isabelland. Then she saw it. The mansion, black stone, tall gates, guards, everywhere. A world she didn't belong to. One guard rushed toward the car, yanking the door open. Boss? What happened to him? His cold eyes landed on her. And who the hell are you? Isabella's breath stopped. This was it. The moment the lie either protected her or destroyed her. Lorenzo stirred weakly, gripping her hand with brutal strength. My wife. Stays, he growled, voice broken, but commanding. The guard stiffened in shock. Isabella felt her heart stop. He thought she was his wife, and now? His entire Mafia world believed the same. The lie had already begun, and she couldn't take it back. The mansion swallowed Isabella, whole the moment she stepped inside. Its marble floors echoed with the weight of old sins, and the air tasted like secrets. The kind whispered by men who ruled cities from the shadows. She followed the guards through long hallways lit by warm, golden lamps, every portrait on the wall pretending to belong in a palace built from blood and still. Lorenzo's hand never released hers. His grip was weak yet desperate, as though she was the last piece of a life he had once lost, every fighting whatever poison tore through his veins. The guards knew. Something had gone wrong. The doctor was already rushing down the grand staircase. Servants were whispering behind curtains. But not one person dared question the identity of the girl their boss clung to. Because Lorenzo De Luca didn't cling to anyone, not even the real woman who once wore his ring. They laid him on a king-sized bed carved from dark wood, silk sheets thrown open in a room that Smelila forgot to breathe. The sight of him, the sleep almost breakable. But the doctor's expression told a different story. The drug wasn't random. The amount wasn't small. Someone had intended to kill him. Lorenzo's men circled the room, like wolves sensing a threat. Their hushed voices rose with fear. a fiend in the center of all of it, was her small, trembling, invisible in every other world, except here, where the devil himself held on to her. Hours passed before Lorenzo's pulse steadied. Hours where Isabella stood by the bed because leaving felt like betrayal, even though betrayal was when he finally relaxed into the sheets. The room's tension dissolved. The guard stepped back. The doctor left. The lights dimmed. Silence fell. And in that silence, the truth revealed itself with cold clarity. The men believed she had returned. The ex-wife, who disappeared. The woman who left. Lorenzo haunted and hollow. And Isabella had let that lie breathe. She had to leave. She had to walk away before this world discovered she wasn't. Elena, before they tore her apart for days. But when she turned toward the door, a man blocked her path. One of Lorenzo's oldest guards. Man whose loyalty had been carved from years of bloodshed. His voice was quiet, grave and utterly certain. The boss will pay whatever you ask, if you stay by his side. Her heart stilled. Money. The word echoed through her like a cruel reminder. Rent overdue. Bills unpaid. An eviction notice waiting on her kitchen table. Sick mother needing medicine. Her reality was a battlefield of poverty, and here was an offer sharper than temptation itself. Stay with a man who thought she was someone else. Play a role she didn't understand. Become the shadow of a woman who once shattered him in exchange. Survival. Her breath trembled, her conscience softened, her fear deepened. Walking away meant nothing but suffering. Staying meant dancing with wolves. But wolves, at least, fed their own. And as she looked back at Lorenzo, broken, drugged, vulnerable, one truth wrapped around her heart like he didn't need Elena, he needed comfort, a warm presence, a lie he could cling to in the dark. She could give him that. For money, just for money. With a single whisper inside her soul, the decision sealed itself. She would stay. And the deal, silent, dangerous, irreversible, was made. Night settled over the DeLuca estate like a black velvet curtain, heavy, silent, watchful. Beyond the tall windows, the city lights glittered far below. Unaware that stranger now stood in the shadow of his life. Isabella had never seen luxury like this. The mansion felt less like a home and more like a kingdom, carved from stone and wealth. Every hall was like frozen tears. Every surface gleamed. Every dew end. She walked through it with the quiet terror of someone trespassing in another person's destiny. Servants stared at her, in disbelief. Guards watched her every movement, calculating and unsure. No one confronted her. But no one trusted her either. She was a question mark in a world where every answer was written in blood. Upstairs, Lorenzo lay in his massive bed, his breathing uneven but no longer dangerously weak. The defevered dreams. His body twitched with memory. Pain. Isabella stood by the doorway, unable to leave, unable to move closer. Hours earlier, she had made a decision. Dangerous one, a desperate one. But reality had sharp edges. And every second inside this mansion reminded her how easily those edges. She looked around the bedroom. The velvet curtains, the gold-framed mirrors, the quiet hum of power for girls who counted every coin just to survive. This was the world of kings, and she was pretending to be the queen who abandoned him. Soft knock broke her thoughts. Housekeeper entered, older, gentle-eyed but cautious. She carried folded clothes, silk, soft cotton tour glass. For you, the woman said carefully, until the boss wakes. Isabella took the clothes with trembling hands. Nothing in her life had ever been handed to her. Food wasn't given, warmth wasn't offered, comfort wasn't free. Here, everything was handed without question, because they believed she belonged to him. The lie twisted deeper. She washed up in the adjoining bathroom, staring at her reflection. Poor girl wearing the role of a ghost, a stranger in silk, lie wrapped in luxury. But when she stepped out, her eyes instinctively drifted to Lorenzo, still unconscious, still burning with fever, still reaching out, his hand restless against the sheets, as though searching for a presence that wouldn't. The weight of what she had done hit her with brutal clarity. She wasn't just pretending to be his wife. She was stepping into the softest wound he had ever carried. The guards downstairs whispered that the ex-wife left him, shattered, that Lorenzo had never recovered, that she was the only weakness a king had ever shown, and now he believed she had returned. Isabella approached the bed slowly, each step echoing with guilt and fear. She didn't dare touch him, lammed when she came close. As though some instinct night deepened, the mansion quieted, and Isabella finally sat in a chair beside the bed, her body exhausted, her eyes heavy. Outside, the storm winds brushed against the windows. Inside, the silence grew intimate, dangerously so, and in that charged stillness, one truth sank into her bones. She had come here for money. She had come here to survive. But the deeper she stepped into Lorenzo's world, the more she felt something shift inside. Her fear, pity, curiosity, something warmer, something forbidden. The mansion didn't feel like a place she could leave anymore. Not because she was trapped, but because something within its walls had already begun pulling her closer. And the night, their first night under the same roof, had only just begun. Morning crept into the mansion like a shy intruder, soft, golden, hesitant. But the warmth didn't reach the bed where the Mafia king lay, fighting ghosts only he could see. Isabella had barely slept. Every hour of the night had been a slow battle between fear and conscience. Each time, Lorenzo moved, each fevered sigh, each tremble. Her heart tightened with an emotion she and now, as the first light touched his face, she finally saw him clearly. Lorenzo, DeLuca power incarnate, a man whose name made criminals kneel. Legend built from ruthless decisions and iron control. But in this moment, none of that existed. He looked human, broken, haunted. His breathing was shallow, his jaw clenched as if he were fighting memories, sharp enough to cut flesh shakeable. Strength had collapsed into weakness. Only she witnessed it. Girl who didn't belong in his world, girl wearing a lie like borrowed skin. The silence in the room pulsed with unspoken truths. No one told her to stay. No one forced her to watch over him. And yet, she hadn't moved from the bedside. She had felt his pain long before she understood it. His nightmares, whispered through every movement. Every restless shiver, the kind born not from fear. A heartbreak that had hollowed him out. The ex-wife. Elena, the woman he thought she was. Isabella didn't know what happened between them. But his body spoke the truth without words. This wasn't the ruin caused by betrayal alone. This was the ruin of a man who once loved fiercely and bled for it. As the sun rose, its gentle warmth slid across his features, softening the hardness etched there. High against his skin, vulnerable rather than timid, he wasn't the monster the world whispered about. Not now. Not here. He was a man poisoned by his own memories. A sudden tremor ran through him. His hand reached out blindly, searching the sheets, searching the air, searching for someone he trusted, someone she was pretending to be. Her breath hitched. Every instinct screamed to pull back, to protect herself from the weight of a lie too, heavy to carry. But something deeper, something fragile and foolish, guided her. Hand forward, gently, she placed her palm over his. The effect was immediate. His muscles loosened, his breath steadied, his fingers curled. Around hers with desperate familiarity, holding on as though she was the anchor to it was wrong, dangerous, cruel. Even and yet, the tenderness in that touch carved a crack inside. Her chest. How long had he lived like this? How long had he carried a ghost? How long had he waited for someone who never returned? Her heart whispered an answer she didn't want to hear. Too long. The mansion remained silent, its walls holding their breath. The city below continued unaware, and Isabella sat at the edge of a bed she never expected to see, watching a man she should have fear-urged. For the first time since stepping into this world, she understood. Lorenzo wasn't just a mafia boss. He was a wounded king, a man carved from power on the outside and scars on the inside. And though she came here for money, something inside her shifted when he tightened his grip around the lie was growing roots, dangerous, delicate roots, and she wasn't sure she wanted to pull them out anymore. The day slipped into motion slowly, cautiously, like the mansion itself feared waking the sleeping king. Servants whispered in hallways. Guards lingered outside the bedroom, their tension a silent storm. The whole estate existed in a fragile pause, waiting for Lorenzo to rise. But inside the dim room, it was only him and her. Isabella hadn't moved from the chair beside his bed. Her fingers still rested in his, loosely now, but still held as if even unconscious. Lorenzo refused. She had thought the daylight would wash away the intensity of the night. She had expected guilt to be stronger in the morning. She had imagined fear would overshadow every feeling she didn't want to name, but the opposite happened. In the morning glow, the lie didn't shrink, it grew, because in the stillness, she saw the truth he carried inside, a truth that shattered the hard shell. Without the armor of consciousness, he was raw, hurting, lonely, in a way no empire could fix. And the weight of that loneliness settled heavy on her chest. She leaned closer, studying the details she hadn't dared to notice before. The faint stubble across his jaw, the shadow of old pain etched near his eyes, the way his lips parted looked nothing like the monster stories painted him to be. He looked like a man who had lost something he could never replace, and he believed she was that something. The lie threaded deeper into his world when the doctor returned, a stern, experienced man, one who had probably patched up more bullet wounds than any hospital surgeon. He examined Lorenzo's pulse and nodded slowly. "He will wake soon," the doctor murmured. "His fever is less aggressive." The doctor's eyes moved to Isabella, analyzing her quietly, respectfully, as if she were someone with a rightful place by Lorenzo's side. "Elena," he said softly, acknowledging the name he believed belonged to her. "He fought for years to forget you. I hope your return brings him peace." Her heart dropped. Pain wasn't just in Lorenzo, it lived in the people who loved him, people who had watched the strongest man they knew break. The lie had stretched beyond Lorenzo now. It had wrapped itself around the entire house. She should correct them. She should leave. She should run from a story she was never meant to enter. But she didn't, because the truth would destroy her and him. The guards outside spoke of war. Someone had betrayed Lorenzo. Someone wanted him dead. Someone inside his circle was a traitor. If Isabella confessed now, if she admitted she was nothing but a poor girl pulled into the wrong nye and, worse, it might send Lorenzo spiraling deeper into the darkness. He was barely surviving. No. The truth wasn't just dangerous. It was lethal. She stayed. She stayed when the maid brought her breakfast she didn't touch. She stayed when Lorenzo turned in his sleep, his brow furrowing as though wrestling invisible demons. Stayed because every instinct, every trembling breath, told her that walking away would destroy Mo by afternoon. Lorenzo's breathing shifted, his body stilled, his fingers tightened, faintly around hers. The fever had loosened its grip. He was waking, and as his eyelids fluttered, as his world prepared to meet her again, the realization struck her. She wasn't ready for him to see her. Not like this. Not with the lie, alive between them. But she also knew something far more dangerous. Something she didn't want to admit. She didn't want to walk away from him anymore, because somewhere, in the mansion's silence, somewhere in his vulnerable stillness, something had shifted inside her, and the lie wasn't just his anymore. It was hers too. Storm clouds gathered over the estate just as Lorenzo stirred back into the world. The moment his breathing shifted, slow, aware, no longer tangled in fever, something sharp and invisible moved through the mansion. A guard sensed before. They even understood it. Their king was waking, and so were his enemies. Far beyond the windows, the city swelled with danger. Negotiations froze. Rival families paused their moves. All eyes turned toward the DeLuca mansion, waiting for a sign. Was he alive? Weak, vulnerable? Power breeds hunger, and hunger attracts wolves. And tonight, the wolves were circling. Inside the bedroom, Isabella felt the shift before she saw it. Lorenzo's grip tightened, faintly around her fingers. A soft sound escaped his chest, low, rough, the poison and nightmare. Her heart thudded painfully. He was waking. She wasn't ready, not for his eyes, not for the truth buried inside them, not for the moment. He'd look at her and see the ghost of a woman she wasn't. But outside that door, Danger was approaching like a silent tidal wave. Boots scuffed. The hallway carpet. Guards repositioning. Weapons checked. Radios crackled with coded warnings. A message repeated in low. Restrained urgency. Movement near the east gate. Scouts spotted unfamiliar vehicles. Rivals circling the property. Someone wanted to test the waters, to see if the king had truly fallen. The mansion braced for war, and Isabella still held the hand of the man they were ready to kill. She leaned slightly forward, breath unsteady, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. Something or fear. She didn't know why. She didn't understand. She only knew this. He felt safer with her close, and that mattered more than it should have. The bedroom door opened quietly, one of Lorenzo's most trusted guards stepping in. A tall man carved N on the waking king. He nodded faintly. "It's starting," he whispered. Her stomach tightened. "What is?" "Rivals testing the estate. They think the boss is weak. They think—" He hesitated, gaze flicking to Lorenzo. "They think this is their chance." Her blood chilled. This wasn't a simple lie anymore. This wasn't just pretending for money. This was a world of violence, of shifting power, of danger that moved like smoke. And she was standing in the middle of it, the guard continued, voice low and solemn. "When Lorenzo wakes, he must see stability, control, strength." His eyes locked on hers. "He must see you." She froze, her a nobody, a girl with nothing but debt and fear in her pockets. But to them, she was the woman who once softened the king. The woman who could calm the monster. Inside him. The only person he ever let close. The guard stepped back, as though giving her space to breathe, or to accept the weight settling on he stay with him. "Don't leave his side. Not tonight." The door closed. Silence. Returned, heavy, expectant, a storm. Brewed outside the walls, weapons. Loaded, enemies waited in the dark. Inside, Isabella sat beside the most dangerous man in the city, her hand still captured by his. Her as Lorenzo's eyelids fluttered open. A slow, painful awakening. She realized something crystal clear. Outside danger wanted his blood. Inside, he would wake expecting love. And she was trapped, between both fates. The wolves were circling, and she was sitting in the lion's den, pretending to be the lion's heart. Lorenzo opened his eyes slowly, the world settling into focus like a storm, reluctantly pulling back. The first thing he saw wasn't the grandeur of his room. It wasn't the gilded walls, the towering windows, the silent guards lingering in the shadows. It was her, Isabella, sitting there, small but unwavering, her hand in his, a presence so impossible, so unexpected, that it anchored him instantly. His mind wrestled with fragments, drugged memories, flashes of betrayal, the familiar ache of a woman he once loved. And yet, here she was, someone else, someone, knew someone, pretending, but the warmth of her hand, the quiet steadiness in her posture, made his heart, so accustomed to Connie, wanted to speak. He wanted to demand truth. He wanted to scream and rage. Instead, all that escaped was a raw, husky whisper. "Stay." The word, low and barely formed, carried weight beyond its simplicity. It carried vulnerability. It carried longing. It carried trust, a thing Lorenzo rarely offered. Isabella froze, but the tremor in her chest betrayed her. This wasn't acting anymore. Her pulse spiked. Her breath caught. The lie had become something unrecognizable. A dangerous, fragile bond. For the first time, Lorenzo didn't command the world around him. The empire he ruled could wait. The streets, the enemies, the betrayals, all could pause, because here, in the silence of the room, he was nothing but a man who had once been shattered, now awakening to something he hadn't expected, and Isabella felt it too, the shift, a heat, subtle yet undeniable, curling through her veins. She had come for survival, for money. Now she stayed for him, not the man she pretended to be, but the man beneath, the broken, dangerous, longing soul. The mansion itself seemed to notice the change. The guards outside, the stillness of the air, the quiet flicker of sunlight on the walls. All held a... Lorenzo's gaze softened as it lingered on her face. There was no arrogance, no threat, no monster, just a man. Raw and exposed, daring to trust, and Isabella, sitting there in a borrowed role, realized with a jolt. She was falling, not for the man she had pretended to be, not for the money, not for safety. She was falling for him. The first moments of connection passed slowly, like a tide creeping over a cliff. Every heartbeat, every shallow breath, drew them closer. A magnetic pull neither could resist. And yet, the world outside the room waited with sharp teeth. Enemies lingered in shadows. Whispers of betrayal threaded through the halls. And the fragile Elizabeth. None of that mattered in this room. Not while he held her hand. Not while he opened his eyes and allowed her presence to soothe the scars he never admitted existed. Lorenzo's fingers tightened around hers. Not possessively, not dominantly, tenderly, protectively, vulnerably. And in that single, silent touch, the unspoken truth surged between them. Something had shifted. The lie had begun to breathe as something real, a dangerous, intoxicating, unstoppable truth. He needed her. She wanted him. The mansion, the storm outside. The enemies circling like vultures. They all faded into insignificance in that heartbeat. Only one reality remained. They were drawn to each other, irresistibly, inevitably, and neither could stop it. The night had begun as a lie. Now, it was becoming a prelude to something neither had expected. Fire had been lit, and it would consume them both. Night draped over the mansion, like a velvet cloak, heavy and silent. The city beyond blinked with its most dangerous household. Isabella had never imagined herself here, at the bedside of a man whose name alone commanded fear, and yet here she was, drawn into a world ever known. Lorenzo lay awake now, propped against the pillows, the sharp edges of his jaw softened by the dim lee, a rhythm that called to something deep within. She had intended to sit quietly, to maintain the fragile illusion of the lie she lived. But the air-art space, the raw vulnerability he'd shown, he spoke, his voice low and rough, carrying the weight of both command and desire. Closer. The word was simple, yet it crackled in the air with electricity. She moved slightly, heart pounding them. Every inch that separated them felt like her hand. Still resting on the sheets near his, trembled. She wanted to pull away. To remind herself, body rebelled. She felt the pull of his presence. Lorenzo shifted, his eyes dark, intense, impossibly close. The scent of him, wood, leather, faint spite fled. Every plan, every caution, dissolved. The gap between them closed. Slowly, deliberately. Her pulse raced. His gaze devoured her, and then, almost. Their lips brushed in a fleeting moment. A whisper of contact charged with longing, guilt, and danger. It was more than either had intended. More than the tension exploded in a heartbeat. Her body trembled with adrenaline. His hand hovered, almost to the air. Neither spoke. Words would ruin it. Words would break the spell, and yet, the heat between them burned brighter than fire. Every breath, every glance, every unspoken old untangle. Outside the mansion, the storm raged silently. The world beyond continued unaware of the precarious between them promised. Something unstoppable, something in that suspended moment. The truth was undeniable. This was no longer a lie. Not entirely. Something real had awakened between them. The almost kiss lingered. Electric, dangerous, intimate. It left them both trembling, hearts racing. And though they pulled back, though reason whispered retreat, the pull remained, magnetic, inescapable in the silence that followed. Isabella realized one undeniable fact. She was no longer playing a role. She was falling. For Lorenzo. For the man behind the empire. The man behind the fear. The man behind the scars. The night had deepened. The mansion held, its breath, and between them, the almost kiss had opened the door to a passion. Neither could deny, a storm of emotion. Desire and dark intimacy waited to break loose, and neither of them was prepared for what would come next. The mansion's grandeur felt suddenly colder. Shadows stretched longer, darker, as though the walls Tisbala sat in the dim glow of the lamps, heart pounding, fingers still trembling from the tension. Ulan moment. It had stirred something inside her she could no longer ignore, but just as desire pulsed, reality shattered the fragile illusion. A whisper came from the doorway. Soft, deliberate, impossible to ignore. Elena, her breath caught. It wasn't Lorenzo speaking. It wasn't some ghost from the past. It was a voice from outside the room, calm but deliberate. A visitor, the ex-wife, or at least some Isabella froze. Every instinct screamed to flee. Every nerve trembled with fear. She had navigated like could not control. She had convinced herself she was untouchable, invisible within Lorenzo's stormed empire. But now, the truth was cracking, splitting the air like lightning in a darkened sky. Lorenzo stirred beside her, sensing her tension even before he fully opened his eyes. His gaze found he could feel it. The danger, the betrayal, not yet revealed, but lurking. Isabella's mind raced. The ex-wife could return. She could expose everything. The lie she had clung to for survival now teetered on the edge of annihilation. And the thought of losing. Lorenzo, losing the fragile trust he had placed in her, tightened her chest every warning. Every instinct screamed, run, but she couldn't. Not when the man beside her had already become more than a role, more than a story. Her heartbeat echoed in the silence, loud and jagged. She could feel Lorenzo's hand tighten on hers. He threat before it arrived. Outside the room, shadows moved faster. Whispers spread with subtle precision. The ex-wife's return, enemies, allies, traitors, all drawn to the scent of weakness, all eager to exploit the smallest crack, and in that moment, Isabella realized the lie had grown roots too deep to pull out quietly. The mansion's walls, the guards' loyalties, Lorenzo's fragile recovery, all balanced on the edge of age, she swallowed hard, knowing she had no choice but to act. Every second she remained silent, risked of yet revealing the truth, now might destroy the one bond she had come to crave. Lorenzo's eyes, dark and stormy, found hers. There was a question in them, wild, dangerous, protective, she wanted to confess. To flee, to admit everything. But the danger outside and the storm inside collided, and she realized the cruelest truth. There was only one path remained. She would stay. She would protect him. She would navigate the shadows, the lies, the enemies, and the ghosts of his past, even if it meant risking herself, because whatever this had become, whatever fire had ignited between them, was no longer about money. It was about survival, and trust, and something darker, hotter, and entirely uncontrollable. The Pola world built on blood and power. And as the ex-wife's name echoed faintly in the hall, Isabella understood one unyielding truth. The lie was cracking, but the bond she and Lorenzo had begun to form was unbreakable. For now, the storm outside matched the one within the mansion's walls, and neither promised mercy. The mansion held its breath. Every shadow, every flicker of candlelight, seemed attuned to the rhythms the walls. Inside, tension thickened the air. Lorenzo sat upright now, his body strong but wary, every movement deliberate. His eyes dark and searching, weighing, consuming. The almost kiss, the shared silences. The quiet nights spent sideband, he knew with absolute certainty that he could no longer contain it. A confession trembled on his lips, raw and unpolished, yet unyielding. "I've waited for you," he murmured, voice husky with emotion, desire, and something deeper. Something. Isabella froze, caught between relief, guilt, and the heat curling through her chest. She wanted to deny it, to remind herself of the lie she wore like a mask. But the weight of his gaze, the pull of his presence, and the truth echoing in every fiber of her being. He leaned slightly closer, his proximity deliberate, suffocating, intoxicating, every detail of him, of his fingers, the heat radiating from his skin. "I didn't just survive without her," he continued, his voice low and relentless. "I've existed," Hall said, swallowing the rawness that came with admitting. Her chest tightened. The lie, the plan, the money, it all seemed meaningless now. Because standing here, with Lorenzo's eyes locked on hers, she knew something undeniable. He was obsessed. Not with power, not with revenge, not with the empire he had built from blood. He was obsessed with her. The words, though whispered, reverberated through the room, like a shattering echo. Isabella's fingers trembled as she gripped the edge of the chair. The heat between them was undeniable. Every instinct screamed to pull away. This was a lie. This was dangerous. But every heartbeat, every hymn. Lorenzo shifted closer, enough that the scent of him, wood, leather, faint spice, swept over her sense. Thought fled. I don't care about the past, he admitted, voice low, unwavering. I don't care about what I've lost anything. Anyone take you from me. Isabela's mind raced. The ex-wife, the rivals, the lie, every danger lurking beyond these walls. Yet, despite it all, she felt herself lean unconsciously toward him, drawn by something more powerful. His hand hovered, almost touching her cheek, hovering with intent and restraint. The confession was a challenge, promise, and a warning. For the first time, Isabela realized the truth she had been avoiding. This was no longer a game. She was caught in the gravity of Lorenzo's obsession, a fire she had ignited by proximity. Lies and mutual danger now roared between them, threatening to end in the depths of his gaze. She saw not a monster, not a king, not a man broken by betrayal. She saw a man who wanted her entirely, body, heart, soul, and, she realized, trembling, that she wanted him too. The lie had begun to crumble. But the passion, the obsession, the dangerous, intoxicating pull between them had only begun to burn. The mansion was quiet, but inside, a storm raged. Isabela moved through the hallways like a shadow, her chest tight with guilt and fear. Every step, every heartbeat reminded her of the lie she had. She didn't belong here, she never had. She came for money, survival, a fleeting chance at escape from poverty, and now, she had something far more complicated. She paused at the grand staircase, glancing back toward the bedroom. Lorenzo's presence still lingered. His voice, low and commanding, seemed to echo. The pull was magnetic. The lie had already become truth in ways she could not name. But the world outside the mansion was not forgiving. The rivals circling, the whispers of betrayal, the constant threat of violence. It all reminded her that she was fragile, that she was an outsider playing in a dangerous man's empty. Tried to convince herself that leaving was the right choice. Rational choice, safe choice. The front door loomed ahead, a symbol of freedom and guilt tangled together. She reached for the hand and then a presence stopped her. Lorenzo appeared, sudden and silent, like a shadow becoming flesh. His dark eyes pierced hers unyestantly, thick with unspoken emotion. "You're leaving?" he asked, voice low, dangerous, and full of disbelief. Isabela's chest tightened. She tried to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. I can't stay," she whispered finally. All of this, it's not real. It's a lie. You're not leaving." He cut her off, stepping closer. Every movement deliberate, magnetic, a predator not like this. "Not when I need you. Not when I want you. Not when I—" His voice faltered, ragged with raw intensity. The confession hung between them like fire waiting. The pull was irresistible. Every instinct screamed to run, to escape the danger and the lie, and yet every heartbeat, every breath, every pulse in her veins drew her toward him. He closed the space between them. His hand hovered near hers, almost touching, radiating ownership and desire. She felt the heat, the power, the dangerous intensity. He carried in every gesture. And then she realized the lie could no longer protect her. The world outside was cruel, unyielding, and ruthless. But the world inside, the world of Lorenzo, was intoxicating, consuming, and alive. She tried to resist, tried to remind herself of survival, of safety, of reason, but the storm in his eyes, the depth of need, the darkness and vulnerability woven together, it held her fingers trembled, hovering near his as if pulled by fate. And for the first time, she understood the truth. She didn't want to leave, not because of money, not because of the lie, not because it was safe. She stayed because she wanted him, wanted the heat, the obsession, the danger, wanted the man who could be terrifying in the world yet fragile, in her presence. The lie had begun to crumble, but something infinitely more, dangerous, had taken its place. Desire. And she realized with a jolt that leaving was no longer an option because she was already trapped. By him, by herself, by a storm of passion she could not resist. The night was thick with tension, the mansion silent but alive with hidden threats. Every shadow Sion on the walls. The storm outside mirrored the S, wild, relentless, and dangerous. Isabela's pulse raced as she moved through the hallway, ever conscious of the empire around her. power that lurked in every corner. But tonight, some of the guards tensed. Radios whispered. Footsteps echoed unnaturally loud. Then the first warning came, a sharp, urgent shout from the east gate. "Move! They're coming through!" Chaos erupted, shouts, alarms, the clash of metal, and the sharp echo of gunfire shattered the silence. The mansion Lorenzo appeared suddenly, dark and commanding, every inch the predator he was known to be. His eye sowed the eye of the storm. "Stay behind me," he commanded low and husky, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. But Isabella didn't move. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with something far more dangerous, adroximity to the man she had begun to crave. The first assailants breached the outer perimeter. Guards clashed with intruders in a dance of violiaos moved like living things. And the mansion shoe and through it all, Isabella found herself pressed against Lorenzo, not by force, but by instinct. His, the heat of him, the tension of survival. The inn he moved with calculated precision, protecting her with every step, every glance, every shift of his shielding, claiming. The connection was alec even as the danger swirled around them. Her mind betrayed her with stolen thoughts. The rough sweep owl of his voice, commanding not just power, but the attackers fell back only temporarily, forced to regroup. But the storm had changed everything. As just survival, just a lie for money. Every brush of his hand, every protective movement, every stolen moment of forced closeness was re-relf into necessity. Passion had disguised itself, and in that brutal, violent, unrelenting moment, she understood a truth she could not escape. She didn't just need to survive. She needed him. Lorenzo's presence filled her senses entirely. The danger outside made the fire between them flare bontrol. His obsession, it consumed her as much as Tevan amidst gunfire and shouts, even as the night threatened to tear them apart. The mansion's walls, they were trapped together, forced proximity, danger, and an inevitable, impossible pull that neither could resist. And as Lorenzo's hand brushed, hers once more, protective, commanding, intimate, she realized, the lie was gone, the danger was real, and the passion was unstoppable. The mansion was quiet now, but the air between them burned with an intensity neither could escape. Tews and the lingering echo of fear, but inside the one fueled not by enemies, but by desire, Lorenzo sat close, the power of him undeniable. His body radiated heat, his presence magnetic, very scar, every line on his face, every tattoo and she was here. Isabella's breath caught as she studied him, the tension of the day giving way to something darker. For survival, for a fleeting chance to protect. He leaned closer, the scent of him, wood, leather, spice, filling her senses. Her fingers trembled as every nerve. Neither spoke. Words would ruin it. Then, almost imperceptibly, their lips met. Not forcefully, not hastily, but a brush, a whisper, a danger, the lie. It all melted away. There was only her heart raced. Her body trembled. She wanted to pull away, to remind herself of the lie she wore surrender, to taste the danger and the passion. The Lorenzo's hands moved, slow, deliberate, tracing the line of her jaw, the curve of her neck, every agile boundary. His touch was fire and ice. Command, the air between them was charged with a dangerous electricity. Every heartbeat, every sigh, every suction, weaving desire into necessity. Neither could resist. Neither wanted to. As they sank together onto the bed, the silk sheets cold beneath them, the mansion seemed to hold a tense. Only the pull of two bodies, two hearts, and hands traced. Lips pressed, hearts raced. Every touch, every kiss, every whisper was a confession where was gone, replaced by raw, undeniable need. She clung to him, lost in the heat, the danger, the intimacy. He held her as if he could protect her lies. And in his arms, she realized a truth. This was no longer about money. This was no longer about survival. This was desire, love, obsession. The night stretched on, unrelenting, consuming, intimate. Every whispered sigh, every stolen touch, first night into their souls. And when morning came, pale and fragile over the mansion, neither could imagine returning to the word because the fire between them had been lit, and it would not be extinguished. Morning light seeped through the tall windows, casting soft gold across the bedroom where the night left them, desire, heat, and the lingering tension of a passion neither had resisted, Isabella lay beside Lorenzo, her head resting near his shoulder, her heart still racing from the storm-bird's touch, his strength, the way he had claw. She thought of leaving. She thought of the lie that had started it all. But now, lying here, enveloped back. Not anymore. Lorenzo stirred, his fingers brushing her hair, tracing delicate paths along her skin. His eyes opener ability. He had awakened not just to the morn in Isabella. His voice was low, husky, filled with emotion. I need to know the truth. Her chest tightened. She had wanted to tell him so many times, to admit the lie, the plan, the deceit had always held her back. Fear of losing him, fear, and yet, looking at him now, seeing the raw honesty in his gaze, she knew she could no longer hide. I didn't come for you, she whispered, voice trembling. I came for money, survival. He silenced her with a gentle but commanding touch. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her chitensity that shook her. I care about us. Not how her breath caught. The weight of his words sank deep into her chest, igniting something fragile and dissolved in the warmth of his acceptance. She began again, but he pressed a finger to her lips, stopping her. No more lies, he whispered. No more games. I don't want the truth because I want to punish anyone. The girl who came for money, the woman I felt of tears welled in her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not the lie, not the role she had taken. Every survival instinct melted away in as she reached up, touching his face, tracing the lines of his jaw, the shadow of stubble, the strength to say. She whispered. Say you'll stay, he said, voice firm yet gentle. Say you'll be mine, not because of a lie, but being in that moment, all doubt, all fear, all hesitation fell away. Yes, she breathed. I'll stay. I want to stay. With you. Lorenzo pulled her close, pressing her into his chest. The world outside the mansion, the threats. TCE. There was only them. Only the fire they had for the first time. They were not pretending. For the first time. They were not running. For the first time. They were together. And the mansion, silent witness to their story, seemed to exhale, finally acknowledging the bond that, because love, raw and dangerous, had taken root, and nothing, neither threat, nor lie, nor past, could extinguish it. Night had fallen again over the DeLuca mansion, but the darkness now felt different, charged, alive, pulsing with a new rhythm. The storm outside had passed, leaving only the quiet hum was rising, one that no enemy could breach. No Riv Lorenzo stood by the window, the city lights reflecting in his dark eyes. Power, control, and ruthful. But now, layered beneath that fearsome exterior, Isabella entered the room, the faint light casting shadows over her features. The fire of desire and H come for survival, for money, for a fleeting chan without a word. Their eyes met, and the world contracted until nothing existed but them. The mansion Lorenzo closed the distance between them with deliberate precision, his hands on her hips. Drawing heary breath carried the promise of passion and prot. She shivered under his touch, desire and fear mingling in a cocktail that left her trembling. She wanted this, needed this, him. Their lips met in a kiss that was fierce, unrelenting and tender all at once. It was not merely past bond they had forged in danger. In lies and in voo. Hands roamed freely now, exploring, claiming, igniting fires that had been smoldering since their fit reigned, consuming every rational thought. Close Lorenzo whispered her name, low and husky, each syllable a vow, a claim, a confession of the obsessored, lips brushing her ear. Only mine, Isabella responded with a tremor, surrendering completely. Not out of fear, not out of deception. But pull that had drawn them together from the begin. Their union was electric, a combination of fire and shadow, danger and intimacy. Each movement, each witnessed the merging of two souls. Forged in hours past, or maybe minutes. Time no longer mattered. The mansion, usually a fortress of control, free to feel, to touch, to consume one another, finally, as dawn threatened to creep again over the city, they lay entwined. Sweat glistening on skiers traced delicate lines over Isabella's back. Lips she rested against him. Every lingering fear replaced with certainty. He had claimed her. Not just he had claimed him in return. Not the empire, not the danger, the lies, the enemies. They all still existed outside the walls. But inside, in the heat, power, passion and love, dark, consuming, unrelenting, had found its ultimate union. And in that moment, Lorenzo and Isabella understood the unspoken truth. No empire, no danger, No betrayal could ever separate them again, because they were bound by fire, by desire, and by a love forged in darkness that would burn forever. Love, danger, passion, Lorenzo, and Isabela's story proves that some bonds are forged in fire. And if you survived this journey of obsession, betrayal, and forbidden desire, don't let the story end. Subscribe now, hit the bell, and dive deeper into a world where every secret could ignite a new store.